Hello, my name is Clara. I am a certified recreational therapist and I am a licensed life coach. I help mothers who are struggling with overwhelm and stress, and I help them find tools that work for them personally to help them manage their stress and create more space in their lives, to be their most honest and authentic selves, and to present the best mother that they can be to their children and to their family. I really want to talk about a really traumatic experience for me as a mom and what I did, what it looked like, and how I overcame that and the blessings that came from that. So without much further ado, let's jump into this. There will likely be a lot of tears because it's a very sensitive topic. When we choose to start our families, we never have the idea in our head that something's going to go wrong. And so when something does go wrong, it is really hard to deal with, like really, really hard to deal with. So I have two children, a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old girl. I'm going to talk specifically about my 18-month-old. Both of my pregnancies were uneventful, which in the medical world means they were great. Uneventful means there was no problems, no risks, no nothing. So both of my pregnancies were uneventful. Both of my births and labors were uneventful. Infancies were quite eventful. And like I said earlier, I want to talk specifically about my daughter who had pretty profound and intense eating issues. I had my daughter in October of 2022. And from day one, she just never nursed right. She was super messy. She couldn't stay latched. Milk was coming out the sides of her mouth always. It was just always just so hard to feed her. And I had to feed her constantly throughout the night. She was never satisfied. It was just really tiring, which it always is. But with my first, he was just a champion nurser. So it was quite the comparison and contrast to go from a kid who was an amazing nurser but bad at breathing to a baby who could scream for days but didn't eat. At about 3 weeks old, we took her in to get a tongue and lip tie evaluation at one of the leading dentists. He found that her tongue and lip tie were quite tight, and so on the same day that we went in, we got both released. It was not a great experience. I was in the room with her, holding her, and it was really heartbreaking. And after we got her lip tie released, he has an IBCLC on staff, and she came and we kind of reviewed how to nurse and what a proper latch looked like, and everything looked good initially. However, as you can see on this chart, her growth started to plateau during that time, and we were getting her weighed fairly regularly because it's what you do when they're babies. And so as you can see on this chart, her growth started to decline quite rapidly. As time went on, she got worse and worse at eating. I met with a couple lactation consultants, which I didn't know at the time, but there is a huge difference between a lactation consultant and an internationally board certified lactation consultant, LC, versus an IBCLC. I really wish I would have seen an IBCLC instead of an LC. And as she continued getting worse, she got more stressed, and so she'd lay on her back and just like her whole body would be tense. She screamed constantly. She just wasn't a pleasant baby, and we found ourselves not really liking being around her. Our son was always like, she's too loud, and it was really heartbreaking. I got to the point within 3 months, I think, her first 3 months, I got to the point where I was severely sleep deprived, and our midwife pointed it out, and she was like, why don't you just hire a night nanny for a few nights to see if you can get Minietta to eat more, because throughout so at 3 weeks old, she got her lip and tongue tie released, and then over the course of 3 months, as you can see in the chart that I shared, her growth, she was born in the 98th percentile. I forgot to mention that. She was born in the 98th percentile, and she kept dropping percentages, and she wasn't gaining weight as she should have. And so we hired a night nanny for 4 nights, I think, when she was about 2 weeks old, who fed her with a syringe all night long. My daughter actually did start to gain weight during that time, and she nursed for like 7 minutes one night, and that was a huge success because she would never nurse for longer than like 5 minutes, maybe. But after we couldn't afford the night nanny anymore, her health continued to drop and tank and decline. At this time where I fully accepted and realized that my postpartum depression was really bad. I had texted a bunch of my friends and told them that I couldn't be a friend for a while. I remember the day that I knew my postpartum depression was real was the day that we'd gotten our kids to bed, and I was in the shower, and my husband came in the shower, bless his heart, because he was like, oh, let's do it, you know? And he got in the shower with me, and I just burst into tears. And I rested my head on his shoulder and just cried, and I was like, Patrick, I'm not doing okay. And he just held me, and he was like, I think you need to go talk to your doctor. And so the next day I texted my doctor, and I told him, Doc, I'm not doing okay. I'm not sleeping. I'm having really intrusive thoughts. I'm just not doing okay. And he said, okay, come in today, which was a Saturday. And he was like, let's come in today. Let's talk and see what we can do. So I came in. He came all the way down from his house. He met with me privately, and we talked, and he ended up prescribing me with Wellbutrin. And I will share a link for this, but I did just go off of it a couple months ago. And I shared the entire 6-week process of getting off of my antidepressants. And so if getting off of your antidepressants is something that you're interested in pursuing, but there's really just not any resources about it, please check the link in the description and watch those videos, because they are very helpful. I go into a lot of detail about the symptoms and the process of getting off of my antidepressants. But I started to take antidepressants, and I did notice that my mental health started getting better, but I was still getting on antidepressants is not going to help you with sleep deprivation, and it's not going to help your baby gain weight. It's just going to help you be more functional mentally as a parent. So I got on my antidepressants, but my daughter was still getting worse. And eventually our midwife told us that there was nothing else she could do, and that we needed to take her to the ER because my daughter, I think she didn't gain weight for 2 weeks straight. So we did the thing that we've been trying to avoid, because I just hate the hospital. I don't have my children in the hospital. And we went to the hospital to have an NG tube inserted. I'll tell you, the hospital experience was truly, truly horrible, as it generally is for us. We got to the ER, and they put us in this really hot room, and we waited for a while. And for some reason, our hospital has a really hard time getting nurses who understand babies to come down to the ER, even when there's a baby in the ER. So we had to wait a while, and eventually they sent down a male nurse. And I don't have anything against male nurses, but this male nurse sucked. He came into the room. He was like really grumpy he was there. He more or less just unceremoniously and unsympathetically just popped a tube in our 3-month-old baby girl's nose. And I had come ready. I had brought 2 fresh bottles of breast milk that I had pumped. And I was like, can you please help me feed my baby? Because he just put it in, taped it on, and was leaving. And I was like, could you please help me feed my baby? I have milk. And he was like, no, we don't have the resources for that. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah, sorry. And then he just left without feeding my baby. So here I am in a hot room with a baby who hasn't eaten for days, and screaming because she's hungry and just had her nose violated by an NG tube. And he just leaves me, and nobody came in to support me at all. My husband had to go because we had left our son with a babysitter. And so he had to go get He had to go get our son and, be a dad to him too. And I was left alone in the ER for hours with nobody attending to me, nobody trying to help me, with just a screaming baby. Uh-oh, it's gonna happen. And we felt very coerced into staying because they would not teach us how to use the NG tube, and they would not feed her until we agreed to admit ourselves into the hospital. So we ended up admitting ourselves to stay the night. And it took, 2 to 3 hours, I think, to finally have them take us back to a room. And on our way to the room, the nurse that took us back to the room was really kind. And I told her, I was like, I need to feed my baby. She's starving. That's why we're here. She's starving. And I just really want to feed her. And when we got to our room, the nurse hooked her up to a syringe and started to feed her. And she fed her an ounce, and my baby finally fell asleep. This nurse really, I think she really could see our distress. And so she took the initiative and went up to the NICU, to the nursery or whatever, and got one of the feeding tube pumps. The NICU really did not want to share with us, which again, not the NICU, the nursery did not want to share with us. It might have been the NICU. Didn't want to share with us. So this nurse had to go up and advocate for us. And the doctor who was on call was just so callous. They wouldn't lend me a pump. Patrick had to come bring me a pump so I could keep producing milk for our baby. While I was in the hospital, I didn't sleep at all. I got visited by a social worker, which now on reflection I see now is because when a child stops gaining weight, they view that as child abuse. It's called failure to thrive, and it can be a result of unattentive parents, which, honest to goodness, I don't see how they viewed me as an unattentive parent, because I was very loudly and vocally advocating for my child, and I was there on a good recommendation from a doctor and a midwife who had seen me struggle through all of this. I got visited by a social worker, which I didn't think too much of at the time, and I was telling her that we needed to leave the hospital, that the hospital was mistreating us and I needed to leave, and I just need them to show me how to feed my baby. I eventually got somebody to show me how to attach the NG tube to a syringe full of milk. And they finally taught me how to feed her. And when they finally released me, they were so reluctant. I had to fill out so much paperwork. And not even a day later, when I got home, not even a day later, I got a phone call from CPS. Because as far as I know, the hospital reported me to CPS for child abuse. And nothing can crush your spirit more as a mom than being reported to CPS when you're simply doing your best. My heart's desire was to feed my baby, and I was the only one in the hospital advocating for her, and they reported me. I'm working on forgiving that whole process and recovering emotionally from that. It takes a long time, but it's part of why I'm making this video, because I'm not scared of that anymore. They've already reported me. I already submitted myself to visits, and I'm still here, and I still have my kids. I love my kids, and my kids love me. What more can you ask for? Shortly after this visit, we started going to a pediatrician regularly. I think we were starting out 2 days a week and eventually went down to 1. We also started going to an occupational therapist, speech therapist, and a physical therapist, and a craniosacral therapist. I also shared our experience for the first time on Facebook, which I really actually regret not sharing on Facebook sooner, because when I shared what we were going through on social media, I had such a huge outpouring of love and support. I had people share with me their stories of being reported to CPS by doctors that were wrongfully accused them of something. I had an outpouring of moms reach out to me about their struggles with feeding their children and keeping their children healthy through allergies and other problems. I had a huge outpouring of people sharing with me their wisdom and resources. And through this outpouring of support, I was able to find a few Facebook groups for feeding issues and NG tubes. I joined those Facebook groups as a way to find hope and support. I found a lot of support. I did not find any hope because there was no hope stories and stories of recovery that I could find. that is why I'm making this video, because I want there to be a resource out there for moms like me. I scoured Facebook, I scoured Instagram, I scoured YouTube for stories of success for children that had gone on NG tubes, because the occupational and physical therapist and occupational speech and physical therapists that I was meeting, they'd all more or less just resigned themselves to the idea that my daughter would be getting a G tube. So in case you don't know, an NG tube is just placed up the nose and then down your throat into your stomach. And so food is pumped in through there. A G tube is inserted directly into your stomach. It's an invasive surgical procedure. My therapy team was all very resigned to the idea that this would happen, and I did not want to put my daughter through such an invasive surgery. I think the Holy Ghost was telling me that she would be a success story and she would get better. Another resource that I found through Facebook is I had a friend send me the contact information for this IBCLC. She's a traveling IBCLC named Katie Yoshida, and she is phenomenal. She specializes in tongue and lip tie releases and the feeding issues that come with those. And so I started meeting with her over Zoom every week, and she actually supported me in building a whole new team for my daughter. She supported me in finding better resources and finding better practitioners for my daughter and for my goals. She also helped me manage my diet, because I didn't realize that Minietta, or my daughter, was allergic to dairy, soy, gluten, and eggs. And so with the help of Katie, I was able to get off all of those things and improve my daughter's, I forgot to mention this, holy cow, she had really bad acid reflux too, which was a result of her food allergies. So with Katie, I was able to get off all those things. She was able to find me one of the top pediatric and infant and maternity chiropractors, who we immediately started visiting, and her name was Dr. Ali, and Dr. Ali helped release so much of the tension in my daughter's body. She also found me the best speech therapist, so I was able to switch up my entire therapy team. I went from 3 child pediatric therapists down to 1, and this one was a licensed lactation consultant, and she heard my goals. Her name was Morgan, and she heard my goals that I knew my daughter could figure it out. I knew my daughter could figure it out, and she knew I did not want to get a G tube. With Katie's help, I was able to find Dr. Ali and Morgan. I was able to reduce my whole healing team for my daughter down to 2 people. And with the help of those 2 people, we eventually did get my daughter healed and eating. But before I get down to the miracle, I want to keep going through the process. Also, through the use of social media, one of my neighbors saw my post and saw my struggles. And she has a friend in our community who'd been through this, but she ended up getting her daughter on a G tube, and she said it ruined their lives. So I got this lady's number, and I met with her, and I texted her, and she became my biggest cheerleader. She helped me through so much. She was always saying, like, don't do that. Don't let them do the surgery. We had to go to feeding schools all around the world to teach our daughter how to eat, because they get lazy if you don't try to teach them how to eat. And she was just my biggest cheerleader that I had. Anytime I butted heads with a doctor, she was my cheerleader in that moment, and I am just so grateful for her. She was amazing, and because of that, I've gotten to become a cheerleader for moms in my community who are struggling with feeding issues with their children. Eventually, at about 6 months old, my daughter was just not able to nurse anymore. She had lost her suck reflex entirely and completely lost her ability to nurse, and she couldn't take a bottle. And my pediatrician at the time, who I eventually also switched out for a better pediatrician, my pediatrician at the time, she kept trying to coerce me into giving our baby formula. I can produce the milk that my children need. I'm like the village milkmaid. Like with both of my children, I have had such an excess of milk that I am able to fully feed another baby, which I have done. With my son, I fed a friend's baby. And with this, with my daughter, I was able to feed another baby. Like I just produce a ton of milk. And so with my pediatrician trying to convince me to add formula to her milk, I did it a couple times, but the milk all has soy in it. And remember, my daughter has a soy allergy, or it's dairy based. It's very hard to find allergen-free milk or formula. So I just kind of ignored my pediatrician and just kept giving my daughter straight breast milk, which at the end of the day, I believe was the exact right choice. I just sacrificed my boobies and I pumped every day for over a year to give my daughter the best nutrients possible. I did eventually switch pediatricians. I eventually went to a pediatrician in town who is known for helping children get off of their NG tubes and gaining weight when they are not gaining weight. So I eventually did switch to her after a few months. And I think that's one of the main messages I want to share with moms who are struggling with feeding their children. If you have a team and the team is not helping you and your child reach your goals, there is no shame in getting a new team. Filter out your team members. Go find a better person for your team. Go find different resources. Contact your county nurse people, your county healthcare, whatever. Just find what you need to reach your goals. You're under no obligation to keep your team. Not at all. If you don't like your pediatrician, get a new one. If you don't like your speech therapist, go find a better one. If you're not seeing the results that your child needs to thrive in this world, get the better resources, because at the end of the day, the person who loves and knows and cares about your child the most is you. I just want you to know that you are empowered to make those decisions for your child. Once I finally got into a pretty solid therapy schedule, I did have to put my son into daycare because taking him to my daughter's feeding therapies was such a challenge. He just wanted all the attention. He played with all the loudest toys, and it was so hard. And we had to make the really hard decision to put him into daycare. And I say that's a hard decision because we've never really wanted to do that. And so I compiled all my daughter's appointments into 2 days, and we put my son into daycare on those 2 days so I could just focus on her treatment and her recovery. And that did cause a lot of issues. I think it made my son feel pushed off to the side because it was around that time that he stopped sleeping. It was around that time that he just really struggled. I mean, there was one night when I was in my daughter's room. I slept in her room for about 6 months. We have a Murphy bed in there, and I slept in there with her for about 6 months because she needed so much constant care. And there was one night where she was screaming inconsolably. Nothing I did could help her. She wouldn't eat. There was a good chance she had probably ripped out her tube, and I needed to wait until the next day to go get it inserted, and she was just hungry and tired. And I was just bawling my eyes out because when you can't help your child, it's the worst feeling in the world. And my son came in the room and he just gave me a big hug. And he just said, "Mommy, I love you." And I don't know why he did that, but he did. But I think that's about when he stopped sleeping. It'll be very interesting if he can ever articulate that for me in the future. I think one of the more personally challenging things that happened during this, not only was it the seeing my daughter suffer, but it was also seeing my son struggle to find his place in our family again. It was seeing my marriage struggle because I was depressed and sleep deprived, and my husband, I think, was struggling with his own version of depression and sleep deprivation. And so not only that, and the postpartum depression and everything else, but I think one of the hardest parts for me
Oh, and also the intrusive thoughts. The hardest part for me was having my faith in God challenged. I never really doubted my relationship with God and that I mattered to God until I went through this, because I felt like he wasn't listening to me, that he didn't know that all I needed was a healthy child, that he didn't know that it was unfair that a child would suffer. I was mad because I felt like I didn't deserve this trial. I was mad because I felt like I had done everything right and I still got stuck with this trial. I was mad that I had another baby with issues. Instead of just being angry and turning away entirely, I decided to start having earnest conversations and prayers with God about it and trying to understand why and what there was to learn. I'm still learning, and I'll share more what we've learned and the blessings from this experience are. I started praying in earnest about it and praying that we'd see a miracle. And over time, I changed that to praying that I would be able to recognize whatever the miracle might be. Whether that miracle was a full recovery, or whether that miracle was experiencing the full extent of modern medicine. I started singing one of my favorite songs from my childhood, one of my favorite primary songs from childhood, called The Child's Prayer. I started singing that regularly. It goes, Heavenly Father, are you really there? Do you really hear and answer every child's prayer? I love that song. I sang it a lot. I still sing it to my daughter. She loves that song. I think it helps both of us feel that we do matter and that God does listen to every single child's prayer. Because he does. He loves each of us so much. And it was so apparent in my child. And eventually, with all the hard work we put into her recovery, with all the prayers, and with my daughter's own tenacity, she did make a full recovery. And that is the miracle right there. She made a full and complete recovery. She is still small for her age. She still doesn't eat much, but she eats and she can drink. I've bought so many bottles and sippy cups, and we finally found the sippy cup that she could drink from. And that made a huge difference because she was able to hold it herself. She and I, about 6 months after her full recovery, she and I got T-boned by this big armed security truck. It just hit the side of my car, spun it out, ripped off the door. And something with the accident, like with the seatbelt, did something to my boob. I don't know what it did. But ever since then, I haven't been able to pump without pain. And so I had to stop producing my own milk for her, which was really hard. But we saw another blessing, and by some happenstance, by some crazy chance, I found this man in our community who gives his goat milk away for free to women and children in need. And so he's been basically feeding my baby for the last 9 months, and I am so grateful for him. You know, this whole experience, gosh, it definitely put me in the pits of despair. I've never felt so low in my entire life. I've never wanted to take antidepressants. I never thought my marriage would get as hard as it did. I never thought that I would hit such darkness in my mind and in my spirit. But there was a lot of experiences and blessings. There was a lot of blessings that came out of this whole experience. I wrote them down, and so I am going to read them. But one of them is, I am no longer scared of CPS, which is why I am so openly talking about this experience. I now know how to advocate for my family in the hospital and in the medical system. And I'm also quite familiar with a lot of our community resources. And that is a huge blessing because it's allowed me to help other women with children that have problems. It's helped me be a resource to them and helped me help them advocate for themselves and find the right resources. And so far, 2 of the children that I have helped the mothers of have found full recoveries. Another blessing that came out of this is it really connected my family to our church community, because the people from our church just really, they came together in droves to help us. There was one woman that we did not know well at all who was always there to babysit my son when I needed help. She brought us food almost every night for a month.
It's a lot. That's a lot. Like, she was amazing. My friend and her husband, they came and took down our Christmas lights in February or March. I don't remember which, because I was so out of it, but they came and took down our Christmas lights. We had people babysitting. We had so much food. We had people come. Two friends from church actually came and cleaned my whole house, because my house was a complete disaster because I just didn't have the energy to do that. And so that was another blessing, was just connecting in that way and receiving so much service from our community and our church. I was able to confront my own darkness through my postpartum depression, taking meds, getting off the meds, and coming out more strong and more resilient. And I know that sounds crazy, but like I said, I do share a lot more about my postpartum depression in a six-part series that I made about getting off of the drugs. And I will share, again, I'll share a link in there, but it really helped me find my resilience and my tenacity. This whole experience helped me with that. My daughter and I have a super strong bond that I'm really hoping is unbreakable. This whole experience challenged mine and my husband's marriage to an extreme that I was hoping we'd never have to confront, especially within 5 years of marriage. But we've come out of it a million times stronger. We are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are Mormons. And this whole experience, I believe, has helped us resolve that we want to be sealed together forever and ever and ever and ever and ever in time and all eternity. So that is another big blessing that came out of this. I now know without a shadow of a doubt in my mind and in my heart that God loves me. He loves my children. He loves my husband. He loves my family. He loves my dog. He loves my community. He loves my friends. He loves my family. He loves my enemies. He loves every single person on this planet. And I can say that confidently, because there is no reason that God should give me the blessings that I got and not give them to somebody else. And I know that for a fact. God is just there waiting to give you what you ask for. And all you need to do is ask. And the last big blessing is I was able to interview with the New York Times, because issues like the one that we experienced are actually fairly common with children who get tongue and lip tie releases. So I was able to interview with the New York Times. I could share the link in this article, in this video as well. But the New York Times did a huge story on this and reached out to me, and I was able to share a bit of my story with them to help spread awareness on this issue. I sincerely hope that watching this video has helped you in whatever you're going through with your child or with yourself. Having a child with problems is hard. Having a child with feeding problems is just, it's so hard, because you can't force feed a baby. You can't reason with a baby. And when you're going through your own mental health struggles and you have other children that depend on you, it can feel hopeless. And I just want you to know there is hope. There are lots of moms like me out there that have gone through this. And I hope you're able to find all the resources you need. And I hope this video has helped you. And if you need coaching was a huge factor in getting me out of my hole. It was a huge factor of getting me through postpartum depression. It's a huge factor in me doing these videos and sharing my experience with you. Without coaching, I would not be where I am right now, mentally and emotionally and psychologically and spiritually and physically. With coaching, I've gotten back on my feet. I've created more space in me, and my coach has helped me in ways that I don't know. I'll be comprehending the ways that she's helped me for the rest of my life. If you are needing help, please reach out to me. I will do everything I can in my power to help you. I will share all the resources that I know of in the description. Please reach out. Message me in the comments, whatever. I am here to help you, whether that is with coaching or with resources to help you get through your child's feeding problems. You can do it. You are strong. And please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video and comment. We're all on this together. Motherhood is a shared bond that we have, and I'm here to help you. I love you, and I hope you have a really wonderful day.